Wow. Holy crap, this is way up here. This is heavy. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I want to start by saying, of course, thank you to 217 Recovery, not only for the event tonight, but just they're such an awesome resource for our community. You know, not only do they put on these events, but they have the meetings and they offer so many services to our recovery community. And I just can't thank them enough for that. And not to mention they employ some of the most wonderful, lovely people that I know today. And thank you to the sponsors who, recognize that the resource that they are. And mostly thank you to all of you for coming out to support and celebrate recovery. You are literally the reason that I'm here tonight, right? And who am I? Well, I'm Jay, and I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. And I live a wonderful life of recovery today. My sobriety date's December 1st, 2015. And I could not do that on my own. I owe that to countless people. And tonight, you are a part of that, so thank you. That applause was for you. Recovery stories. When I think of recovery, I think of a lot of things. I think of guidance, purpose, love, compassion. The list could go on, but really, when I really break it down, none of those things are possible for me without connection. So to me, recovery means connection. That's a connection with my community, a connection with my fellowship, a connection with my concept of a higher power, a connection with myself. That's a lot of what I lost in active addiction, that among a lot of other things. And in fact, I didn't lose it, I gave it away. I gave away a lot of things. I didn't lose them. That really helped in early recovery because I could say, well, I'm not a loser, I'm a giver. I gave it all away. That really helped with the guilt and shame early on, really. So, I can't talk about my recovery without talking about addiction, alcoholism, drug addiction. And to me, that story has everything to do about progression. The more I drank, the more I used drugs, I progressively got worse, and I got worse, never better. Clearly though, there's something there in the beginning, right? There was that good feeling. Paul hit on it, Superman, all that stuff. But I've really had to really consider, how could I allow something to progress so far? My addiction progressed to a point where drugs and alcohol weren't just something that I did, they were who I was. Doing drugs and drinking became my identity. And it was a part of my life that consumed and destroyed every other aspect of my life. And so I really had to analyze that. How could something have such a firm grip on me that it took me to that? And fortunately, I had a lot of other people in recovery, and I've had a lot of opportunities to talk and reflect about this. And, if I really look back, drugs and alcohol, they had a grip on me before I ever even used the substance. I think back to my childhood. And, back in my days, beer commercials, they were fun in the sun, sand, the beach, attractive women in bikinis, a dog named Spud McKenzie. People were in clubs and they were having parties and, they looked important. So many holidays when I was growing up seemed to be mostly about alcohol. St. Patrick's Day, New Year's Eve, the 4th of July. There were mantras around drinking, sex, drugs, rock and roll, party hard, work hard, play hard. These were all things that I was hearing. And, drugs, forget it. School really gave me the desire for drugs because they had this program called DARE. I don't remember what DARE stood for, but for me it meant drugs are really exciting. because I had never touched any of it. But I'm in school and they're playing this video of these two kind of dorky little kids that remind me of myself. And here comes this older kid in ripped jeans and a heavy metal t-shirt and looked like the coolest kid in my school. And he offers them pot. So they use it. And pretty soon he's hanging out. These kids are hanging out with him. You know, I was like, well, okay, I want to be cool. I want to be one of the cool people in school. I got to smoke pot. Noted, you know. And then they show, you know, the next video is a guy, he's in the suit and he's working this important job and he goes in the bathroom and he's snorting cocaine and all of a sudden the tie's off and he's throwing away his life. And I'm like, I hate ties. So cocaine sounded like a pretty good alternative right now, you know. You know, all of the adults were telling me, little Jay, you can't drink, as they're tossing one back. You know, little Jay, you can't smoke, as they've got a cigarette in every ashtray in every room of the house, you know. Little Jay, don't ever let me fucking catch you swearing, you know. It's like, all these people were telling me what not to do, and they were doing it. And these were adults. I mean, they had everything I wanted. They had freedom. They had independence. So to me, adulthood, freedom, independence had a big part to do with drinking and smoking and swearing and so a lot of other shit they were telling me not to do, you know? And I'm not saying that to blame them, right? I mean, my whole generation was exposed to that. They're not all drugs and alcohol, but there's something in me that is what clicked. So before I ever took a substance, it was my main priority to try it as soon as possible. And when I did, wow, it was better than I ever could have imagined, right? I've heard non-alcoholics, non-drug addicts kind of explain their experiences with drinking and using. And they say, I didn't like it because I felt out of control, right? I felt a loss of control. When I used and drank, I felt like everything that had control over me didn't fucking matter anymore. You know, I had a sense of freedom and independence. You know, the expectations of adults and all of the stuff just went away, and I had the Superman syndrome, and my experiences were supporting it, man. I mean, I was more confident. Suddenly, you know, I am one of the cooler kids in school. I got more friends. I'm making out with girls. It's like, wow, you know, I should have done this sooner, kind of thing. And much like the adults that I saw in my life, what I really craved was freedom and independence. You know, I didn't want people telling me what to do. That's pretty common amongst alcoholics, by the way. Don't fucking tell me what to do. You know, and so I recognized, yes, okay, these drugs and alcohol, they give me a sense of freedom and independence, but it can't be all I do. I recognize that if I want to live the life I want to live, I have to have, you know, a car and a place to live, and gotta have all the other stuff too. So, you know, I did just enough to stay in school and eventually barely graduate. And I had a part-time job and made a little paycheck, and it was all for gas, cigarettes, drugs, and alcohol, you know. And I think really that's when, for me, a double life began. You know, I have this life where I have to somewhat have my shit together and be organized and responsible and do the things that I need to do. And then in my free time, I can do whatever the hell I want and nobody can say shit about it. So that's the way that I live my life. I started a double life from that point on. The problem is, every once in a while, that those two worlds would collide. And the first time that they really collided, it was a literal collision. At 22, blacked out at the wheel, didn't stop when the road came to an end, hit a landscape berm, jumped my Jeep Wrangler, and landed upside down on top of a house. I broke all the bones in my face, got a little plate in my head. Still have the scars today. And that slowed me down a little bit for a little while. After that, I went to college, and I'm kind of fortunate. I'm good at reading, comprehension, good at test taking. I did really well in college. And it was, not too long after the accident, so I was still pretty low key. And at that time, too, I had my longtime girlfriend and who I would eventually come to marry. And, thanks to that college degree and a job that I had been working, we were able to leave Michigan and go live in a lot of pretty cool cities around the place. I trained to be a chef, and I was able to, because of having my degrees, I was able to become a manager pretty quickly. And so I had plenty of money, and the job that I worked embraced my lifestyle, really. Drinking and drugging was not all that frowned upon in my career choice. And, so that went pretty smooth for a while. But there would be the hiccups, the embarrassing moments, hey, Jay, maybe you shouldn't drink dark liquor. It makes you kind of violent. So stick to the light stuff, all that, a lot of examples of this. And, my drinking and drugging career spans decades, a couple of them. So there was a lot of things coming up, a lot of problems, off and on, but I could always ride them out, Could always still kind of keep those two worlds separate. Began to have problems when my wife decided that she didn't like drinking so much. And so I lost my main drinking buddy, and now I'm hiding my drinking. I'm lying, right? I start to experience really bad hangovers. Drinking like I did, eventually I got to the point of DTs. Delirium tremens, if you're not familiar, you've got a window, until you have to drink again, or you're shaking so bad you can't lift the bottle to your face, And, by that point, there was just no keeping it together anymore. Lots of problems with the wife. She separated from me. I was too drunk to really even realize it. Started to lose time, so went to work one day and forgot to punch in like 3 different times. And they asked me a week later, hey, we need you to fill out this missed punch sheet. Can you just put in, when you came in, what time you left, blah, blah, blah. And I filled it out to the best of my ability. I couldn't remember the day. I couldn't remember yesterday, It looked like, so I filled it out. They checked the video and they said, you're lying, you're trying to steal time, you're fired, So 39 years old and the career's gone, the wife's gone. I'm living in California at the time. I can't afford to stay there. And so probably at part of my lowest point, my mommy came out from Southern Alabama to collect me and bring me back. I managed to stay sober for a couple of weeks while I got that process going, and went and stayed with her for about a week. And my wife, we were still married, reached out. She was in Traverse City, Michigan, and she asked me, she was in a bit of a pinch and asked me to come up for 10 to 14 days to help her out. And so I came up, saw it as an opportunity to fix things, make things right, get my wife back, my life back, all those things. So I came up here to start that process and promptly started drinking. Like, the worst possible time. It was always, it's unbelievable to me. It's who I was. I couldn't imagine life with or without it. Unbelievable. So for the first time in my life, I reached out for help. I don't know, something was different. Like, I went to detox on 8th Street. And thank God that we have those resources here, because when I walked in that place, it was like they knew me better than I knew myself. They said, we can get you a bed and treatment. And I thought to myself, I really fucked up this time. Going to treatment would probably look pretty good to everybody if I just went to treatment. So the day came and I'm supposed to go to treatment, and I said, okay, got a ride out front. I'll go get over to treatment now. And they said, you know what, we'll drive you, And yeah, I didn't have a ride out front. I had to walk to family fare for a bottle. I was already ready. They took me to treatment, and that's when things really changed, right? I showed up to treatment and it was like college. Like, I'm gonna ace this shit. Gold star every day. Check this out, I'm gonna impress everybody. But while I'm there, I'm making calls to the wife, and she's like, I don't want you around. I make a call to mom. She's like, you're not coming back here. For the first time in my life, I had nothing. No one was stepping up. All the people that enabled me were gone. And that's when, again, the resources for recovery available in this area stepped up and saved my ass, because they offered me a bed at a sober living house, brand new. It was just opening up. It was kind of a different kind of thing, right? You're going to go to this sober house, and we're going to hold you accountable, and you'll do piss tests and breath tests and all this stuff. But if you want to live here, you have to go to 4 12-step meetings a week, and you have to actively work the steps. And my first thought was, motherfucker. Like, homelessness wasn't looking so bad. I don't know. Because we can back up, right? Because this wasn't my first exposure to 12-step recovery. Back in California, about 4 years before this time, my wife had said, this is out of control. You're lying constantly. You're hiding your drinking. You're not you. You're not present. I don't even know who you are anymore. We got to try something. I've heard AA. And dude, I know it's a lot of people were exposed to it. I was not. I had no freaking clue what AA was. Oops, I said it. It's supposed to say 12-step recovery. I was exposed to 12-step recovery meetings, everybody. So, I said, well, hell yeah, man, if it's going to get her off my back, I showed up in these 12-step meetings, and I wasn't there because I had a drinking problem. I was there because my wife had a problem with my drinking. And I was looking for every reason to hate it, and I found plenty. I couldn't, it was like, oh, we're spiritual, not religious. Now let's pass the collection plate and everyone pray, and I'm just like, yeah, this is not the deal. This is not going to work. But I did listen enough to kind of be like, these people know some shit only we know. They talk about drinking, hiding their drinking, drugging, their feelings about drinking and drugging, some of the shit they've had to deal with because of their drinking and drugging. That was making sense, but I was still looking for differences rather than similarities. Because one guy would share, he'd share his experience and how he recovered, and I'd be over here thinking, yeah, you recovered, you're a lightweight, dude. Like, you didn't do shit, It was easy for you. And then the very next guy would share, and I'd be like, oh, yeah, you recovered, you're a friggin' loser, bro. Like, you lost everything. And meanwhile, these sheets are going around, and I'm thinking, these people can't even drink and drive properly. Forget about the fact I jumped my Jeep into a house, right? We're not talking about that. That was 20 years ago. Like, I've gotten better at it. So during that 4 years, when I wanted the family off my back and I wanted to seem like I was trying to do something to change my life, I would go to 12-step meetings, right? And, things were happening. I went to most meetings drunk, so I probably could have got a little more out of it than I was willing to at the time. So now we're back, right? I move into this sober house. It's time to go to meetings. It's time to actively work the steps. And something had changed in me at that point. I didn't recognize it then. But I had never been that hopeless, right? I had never been that low. I had never seen No other alternative. This was a first. And so again, the pride kind of kicked in. Well, I'm going to gold star this shit too. Then, I'll see you, I'll go to these meetings and get my sheet signed. And when I was going to the meetings, I found a mentor. We call him a sponsor. But I found this guy, and he agreed to show me how to live life the 12-step way, to take me through the steps, and he gave me suggestions. He shared with me his experience, and through that process of me sharing my experiences, sharing his experiences, for the first time, I started looking for our similarities rather than our differences, and we connected. I felt a connection. I didn't know how cut off I had been. So lonely, man. Alcoholics, drug addicts. Some of my literature says we will know loneliness like no one else will. And I didn't even realize how lonely I was until I started to connect with this man and started to appreciate what he was giving to me. And, through the process, out of necessity, we get to a point where I'm encouraged to be of service, to do service. And so out of necessity, if I want to stay clean and sober, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do service. And I'm going to get vulnerable with others, and I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to share my experiences with them, and I'm going to listen to their experiences, and I'm going to try to be helpful to these people. And connection. Again, more connection through service. I was fortunate enough to, in these meetings, the sober house was great. It saved my ass, but I was ready to get the hell out, right? And in the meetings, I had made a connection. I had made a connection with another guy in the same boat as me. He wanted to get out of his situation. He wanted to live on his own, but couldn't quite do it on his own either. He needed someone else to do it with him. And we were right there together. We were working with our mentors. We were practicing these 12 steps. We were taking the suggestions, and we had made up our mind that, man, I'm not burning it back down. I'm not drinking or drugging no matter what. And we got a place together, and we did this together. Powerful connection. Amazing. So if you ever wonder why I love Jesse S. so much, now you know. Right. Through him, I met Corey, and you heard what she had to say, and I reflect that right back. Wonderful woman. Amazing. Very important part of my life today. I continue to go to these meetings and connect with more and more people. And then I get the opportunity. I met a lovely young lady. Right? And we were in love. And I wanted to make it work because I had already screwed one up bad. I had an ex-wife at that time. And learning to love her, she taught me to love myself a little bit better, right? And so if you've ever wondered why I love Megan T so much, then you clearly don't know her because she's lovely, right? So here I am, I'm making a connection with my fellows, right? And then I'm encouraged to do some service that takes me outside of the fellowship a little bit, and I start to meet the families. Start to meet professionals, non-alcoholics who work in the field. And I start to share my experience and my work ethic and kind of work alongside them. And we connect, right? So now, not only am I connecting with my fellowship and through the process of 12 steps, my higher power, but I'm also connecting with my community, right? Pretty powerful for a guy like me. And connecting with the community, the families and the professionals, the non-alcoholics and the non-drug addicts, I start to see we have a lot of similar struggles too. We have a lot of kind of the same issues in life, right? So, you know, maybe I'm not just connected to my fellow drug addicts and alcoholics, but I share a common struggle with all people, you know? So I start to feel a part of society and humanity as a whole. And I realized, man, I hadn't felt a part of anything for so long, and now I'm a part of everything through this process, right? And to me, that's recovery. And if I continue doing what I do to get me what I did to get me here, then I'll continue to stay recovered. So each and every day, I do what got me here, and I try to move the ball a little further forward, right? When we recover, and I've been blessed to help other guys recover, our families recover, we have children, the chain of addiction is broken at times, right? If our children become drug addicts too, we know how to support them. We change our communities. It's a ripple effect. It's absolutely phenomenal to be a part of. And I am so blessed to be a part of it, right? And that's why when I'm given this opportunity to come up here and share my story, hell yes. And I was nervous as hell, right? I was so glad when I could stop thinking about what I was gonna say and I could just get up here and start saying it, all right? So I don't know where I'm at on time, but I'll just close by saying my grandmother passed away Monday night at 10 p.m. And she loved me so much, and she was so proud of my recovery, and she was so grateful that I had a fellowship in a community that helped me get to where I was, right? And she would always say to me, sweetheart, I love you and I am so proud of you, right? And if she was here, she'd say the same thing to each and every one of you. So since she's not, I'll tell you, I love you and I'm proud of you. Thank you.